The Great Hall of the Galactic Alliance space station hummed with nervous energy. Hundreds of beings from across the known galaxy gathered for the annual bonding ceremony. This was where lifelong partnerships formed between different species, creating diplomatic ties and sharing knowledge across the stars. Sarah Chen stood near the back of the crowd, her human eyes taking in the spectacular sight. Crystalline beings from Andromeda floated gracefully above the floor. Four-armed Centaurians gestured excitedly with all their limbs. Telepathic void dancers communicated in shimmering thought bubbles that only their intended partners could see. The bonding ceremony was simple in concept, but profound in execution. Each participant would step forward and present themselves. If another being felt a connection, they would approach and touch palms, or whatever equivalent appendage they possessed. The touch would either spark a bioenergetic link, proving compatibility, or nothing would happen, and they would move on to try with someone else. Sarah watched as pairs formed throughout the hall. A tall, willowy plant being from the garden worlds linked with a rocky creature from the mining planets. Their touch created a brief, beautiful green glow. The crowd murmured appreciatively, but her attention kept drifting to a corner of the hall where one being sat alone. The creature was unlike any she had seen before. It appeared to be from the Zalathi race, known for their remarkable ability to manipulate energy fields. Zalathi typically stood 7 feet tall with graceful, flowing movements and 6 delicate tendril arms that could weave light itself into solid constructs. This Zalathi was different. It sat in what looked like a mobility device, only 3 of its 6 arms functional. The other 3 hung limp and gray, clearly damaged. Its natural luminescence, which should have been bright blue, flickered weakly, occasionally sputtering out entirely. Where other Zalathi moved like dancers, this one struggled with each small motion. Sarah had been watching for the past hour as after being approached, the disabled Zalathi, considered, and then turned away. Some didn't even try to hide their discomfort. Others made excuses about compatibility concerns. A few had attempted the bonding touch, but pulled away quickly when the energy transfer proved unstable due to the Zalathi's injuries. The ceremony coordinator, an elderly Meridian with skin like polished silver, approached the Zalathi with barely concealed frustration. Sarah was close enough to hear the conversation. "Zatar," the coordinator said, using the Zalathi's name, "perhaps you should consider withdrawing from this year's ceremony. Your condition makes successful bonding unlikely. The energy fluctuations could even be dangerous to potential partners." Zatar's working arms moved in what Sarah recognized as the Zalathi gesture for respectful disagreement. When it spoke, its voice came through a translation device, melodious but tinged with static from its damaged energy field. "I have the right to seek a bondmate, Coordinator Yevon. My injuries do not diminish my worth." "Of course not," Yevon replied, though his tone suggested otherwise. "But we must be practical. No one has successfully maintained contact with you for more than a few seconds. The ceremony will end soon and—" "Then I will wait until the end," Zatar interrupted, a note of steel in the musical voice. Yevon made a sound of exasperation and glided away. Sarah saw Zatar's functioning arms droop slightly, the brave front crumbling when it thought no one was watching. Sarah's hands clenched at her sides. She had come to the ceremony out of curiosity, more than a real desire to bond. Humans were still relatively new to the Galactic Alliance, and while they were respected for their adaptability and surprising resilience, they weren't often chosen as bondmates. Too unpredictable, some said. Too emotional, said others. But watching Zatar sit alone, rejected not for who it was, but for its physical limitations, stirred something deep in Sarah's chest. It was the same feeling she'd had back on Earth when she'd seen her younger brother excluded from sports because of his prosthetic leg. The same anger at a universe that judged worth by physical perfection. Before she could second-guess herself, Sarah was walking across the hall. Beings parted before her, some watching with curiosity, others with something like pity. The humans always did tend to make impulsive choices. Zitar didn't notice her approach at first, its attention focused on keeping its flickering energy field stable. When Sarah stopped directly in front of the mobility device, Zitar looked up, and Sarah saw its large, multifaceted eyes widen in surprise. "Hello," Sarah said, grateful that the translation devices worked seamlessly. "I'm Sarah Chen from Earth. Would you be interested in attempting a bond with me?" The hall around them grew quiet. Sarah could feel hundreds of eyes on them, but she kept her gaze on Zitar. You want to bond with me?" Zitar's voice held disbelief. "Did someone dare you? Is this what humans call a joke?" "No," Sarah said firmly. She sat down on the floor so she was at eye level with Zitar. "I've been watching you. You've faced rejection after rejection, but you haven't given up. That takes courage. And I heard what you told the coordinator. You're right. Your injuries don't diminish your worth." Zitar studied her for a long moment. "You understand that bonding with me will be difficult? My energy field is unstable. I cannot create the light constructs my people are known for. I require assistance for many daily tasks. The bond might not even form properly." Sarah smiled. "My species has a saying, 'Nothing worth doing is easy.' And as for needing assistance, humans are pack animals. We're literally built to help each other. It's kind of our thing. You could bond with anyone here." Zitar gestured with one functioning arm at the crowd. "Why choose the broken Zealothi?" "You're not broken," Sarah said with quiet intensity. "You're injured. There's a difference. And I'm not choosing you out of pity. I'm choosing you because in the face of everyone's dismissal, you still believe in your own worth. That's strength. That's the kind of partner I want." The silence in the hall was absolute now. Even the coordinator had stopped to stare. Zitar's working arms trembled slightly. If you're certain. But I must warn you one more time. When my energy field fluctuates, it can be painful for others. The last being who tried to bond with me said it felt like touching lightning." Sarah grinned, and several nearby aliens stepped back at the very human display of teeth. "Lucky for you, humans have a ridiculously high pain tolerance. We used to live on a death world, remember? A little lightning never killed anyone." She paused. "Well, okay, it has. But you know what I mean." Despite everything, Zitar made a sound that the translator interpreted as laughter. It was rusty, as if it hadn't laughed in a long time. "You are either very brave or very foolish, Sarah Chen of Earth." "Probably both," Sarah admitted. "It's another human thing. So, shall we try this?" Zitar extended one of its functional arms. The tendril-like appendage was elegant despite the visible scars where it had been injured. Sarah could see the energy flowing beneath the translucent skin, flickering and unstable like a broken circuit. She reached out her hand without hesitation. The moment their skin touched, Sarah's world exploded into color and sensation. It was like touching lightning, just as Zitar had warned. Energy coursed through her nervous system, wild and uncontrolled. Her vision filled with fractured rainbows, and she could taste colors, smell sounds. Every nerve ending screamed. She heard gasps from the crowd, someone shouting for a medic, but Sarah didn't let go. Instead, she closed her eyes and did what humans did best. She adapted. The pain was intense. But pain was just another sensation. She'd broken her arm rock climbing once and had hiked 3 miles back to camp. She'd gotten tattoos over scarred skin. She'd pushed through marathon walls and CrossFit workouts that made her muscles scream. Pain was temporary. Connection was worth it. "It's okay," she said through gritted teeth, not sure if she was talking to Zitar or herself. "I've got you." She felt Zitar trying to pull away, but she held on. And then something shifted. The wild energy began to find a rhythm, matching itself to Sarah's steady human heartbeat. What had been chaos became a dance, electric and beautiful. The pain faded, replaced by something incredible. Through the bond, Sarah could sense Zetar's emotions, shock, wonder, and underneath it all, a deep well of loneliness that was finally being filled. But more than emotions, she could see. Not with her eyes, but with some new sense the bond had awakened. She could perceive energy fields throughout the room, each being a unique signature of light and power. And she could feel Zetar's damaged fields, could sense where they were broken, where the energy leaked and sputtered. Without thinking, operating on instinct she didn't know she possessed, Sarah began to shore up those broken places. Her human bioelectricity, crude and unrefined compared to Zalathi energy manipulation, nevertheless provided a stable foundation. Where Zetar's field flickered, Sarah's steady presence held it constant. The glow that surrounded them wasn't the pure blue of a healthy Zalathi or the warm gold that humans apparently produced. It was something new, a swirling mixture of blue and gold, electric and warm, creating patterns neither species had seen before. The crowd erupted. Some cheered, others stood in stunned silence. The coordinator looked like someone had hit him with a stun beam. But Sarah only had attention for Zetar, whose multifaceted eyes were leaking what she somehow knew were tears of joy. "How?" Zetar whispered. "The pain should have been unbearable. No one has held on for more than seconds." Sarah squeezed gently with her hand still intertwined with Zetar's tendril. "Humans are stubborn. We don't give up on the people we care about. And now that we're bonded, you're stuck with me." "I think," Zetar said slowly, "that I'm perfectly content with that arrangement." They stayed like that for a long moment, hands clasped, energy swirling around them in a display that would be talked about for years to come. The broken Zalathi and the impulsive human who had done what no other species would, looked past the surface to find the person underneath. As the ceremony continued around them, other beings began to approach. Not for Sarah, she was clearly taken, but for Zetar. The successful bonding had revealed something the others had been too fearful to discover. Zetar's injury had created unique properties in its energy field. Properties that, when stabilized by a partner, could create entirely new forms of energy manipulation. But Zetar politely declined all other offers. It had found its bondmate, the one being in the entire galaxy who had seen worth where others saw only damage. "So," Sarah said eventually, helping Zetar maneuver its mobility device through the crowd of suddenly interested beings, "Want to get out of here and grab something to eat? I'm starving, and I should probably learn what you actually eat before we make this living arrangement permanent." Zetar's laughter was clearer now, the static in its translator less noticeable. "I consume energy directly, but I can accompany you. I find I enjoy watching humans eat. It's fascinatingly inefficient. Hey, don't knock pizza until you've tried it, or, well, watched me try it." As they left the hall together, Sarah heard whispers following them. The story was already spreading through the Galactic Alliance networks, the human who had bonded with the disabled Zalathi, creating a new form of energy never seen before. The human who had stood where no one else would. But Sarah didn't care about making history. She cared about the being beside her, who was already explaining the best observation spots in the station's food district, its voice bright with an enthusiasm that had been absent an hour ago. Sometimes the greatest connections came from the most unexpected places, and sometimes it took a human to remind the galaxy that worth wasn't measured in perfection, but in the courage to keep trying despite imperfection. The automatic doors of the ceremony hall closed behind them, but their story was just beginning. 3 weeks had passed since the bonding ceremony, and Sarah was beginning to understand just how profoundly her life had changed. She stood in the quarters she now shared with Zetar, watching her bondmate struggle with what should have been a simple task, forming a light construct to reach a high shelf. Zetar's 3 functioning arms trembled with effort, the energy fluctuating wildly as it tried to solidify light into a grasping tool. The construct flickered into existence for a moment before dissolving into sparkles that dissipated harmlessly in the air. "I can get it," Sarah offered, already moving toward the shelf. "No." Zetar's voice was firm, despite the exhaustion evident in its posture. "I must practice. The healers say that with our bond stabilizing my field, I should be able to perform basic constructs again." Sarah bit back her instinctive response to help. She was learning that Zetar's independence was hard-won and fiercely guarded. Instead, she sat cross-legged on the floor and opened her senses to their bond, feeling the frustrated determination radiating from her partner. Through their connection, she could perceive the problem. Zetar's energy was like water trying to flow through broken pipes, spilling out at crucial junction points. Sarah had been acting as a patch, her steady human bioelectricity providing external support. But that was a temporary solution. "What if," Sarah said slowly, "instead of you trying to work around the damaged pathways, we work together to create new ones?" Zetar turned to her, multifaceted eyes reflecting confusion. "New pathways? That's not how Zelathi biology works. Our energy conduits are formed at birth." "Maybe not for pure Zelathi." Sarah stood and moved closer. "But we're not pure anything anymore, are we? We're something new." She reached out and took Zetar's primary tendril in her hand. The familiar tingle of energy exchange sparked between them, but now it felt as natural as breathing. "Show me what you're trying to do," Sarah said. "Not just physically, show me through the bond." Zetar hesitated, then opened their mental connection wider. Sarah gasped as she suddenly understood the complexity of Zelathi energy manipulation. It wasn't just about channeling power. It was about weaving it, like an artist painting with light itself. She could see the pathways in Zetar's body, could trace where they had been severed in whatever accident had caused the injuries. But she could also see something else, tiny new threads of connection, gossamer thin but growing, that linked Zetar's energy system to her own. Their bond wasn't just emotional or mental, it was becoming physical, biological. "Do you see them?" Sarah asked, excitement building in her voice. Yes." Zetar's response was wondering. "But that's impossible. Different species can't integrate at the cellular level." "Tell that to our cells," Sarah grinned. "Look, I have an idea. Instead of you trying to force energy through broken channels, what if we create the construct together? Use my pathways to supplement yours? That's never been done before." "Well, a human had never bonded with an injured Zelathi before either, and look how that turned out." Zetar made that rusty laughing sound that Sarah was hearing more and more often. "Your species' optimism is either inspiring or terrifying." "Why not both? Come on, let's try." They stood together, Sarah's hand still linked with Zetar's tendril. Sarah closed her eyes and felt for those new pathways, the bridges between their biological systems. It was like learning to use a muscle she'd never known existed. "Okay," she murmured. "You lead, I'll support." Zetar began to channel energy toward a construct. Sarah felt the power building, felt where it wanted to leak from the damaged conduits, and instinctively reinforced those areas. Her human bioelectricity was crude compared to Zelathi energy, but it was steady, reliable, stubborn, just like humans themselves. The air in front of them shimmered. Slowly, like dawn breaking, a construct began to form. It wasn't the pure blue of traditional Zelathi work or the golden glow Sarah's energy produced. It was something entirely new, a swooping, graceful form that shifted between colors like an aurora borealis. The construct solidified into a reaching arm of pure light, steady and strong. Together, they guided it to the shelf, grasped the needed item, a crystalline data pad, and brought it down. When the construct dissolved, they were both breathing hard, or in Zatar's case, venting excess heat through specialized pores. But the data pad was in Zatar's physical grasp, retrieved by their combined effort. "We did it," Zatar whispered, staring at the pad as if it were a miracle. I made a construct again." "We made a construct," Sarah corrected gently. "Together." Before Zatar could respond, their door chime sounded. Sarah opened it to find Dr. Yithian, the station's premier xenobiologist, practically vibrating with excitement. The Corvidi scientist's feathers were ruffled in a way that indicated extreme agitation or interest. "I've been monitoring the energy signatures from your quarters," Dr. Yithian said without preamble. "What you just did should be impossible. I need to run tests immediately." Sarah glanced at Zatar, who nodded slowly. They had known this was coming. Their bonding had created something unprecedented, and the scientific community was intensely interested. 2 hours later, they sat in Dr. Yithian's lab, covered in monitoring sensors. The wall displays showed readouts that meant nothing to Sarah but had the doctor making excited chirping sounds. "Remarkable. Your biological systems are actually merging at the quantum level. The human's neural plasticity is adapting to channel Zelathi energy patterns, while the Zelathi's damaged conduits are being supplemented by human bioelectric pathways. You're becoming a hybrid organism." "Is that bad?" Sarah asked, though she didn't feel bad. She felt better than she ever had, actually. "Bad? This is revolutionary. Do you understand what this means? Your bond isn't just emotional or mental, it's evolutionary. You're proving that species barriers are more flexible than we ever imagined." Zatar's tendrils moved, and what Sarah had learned was anxiety. "But I'm only able to function because of Sarah. Without her, I'm still—" "No," Dr. Yithian interrupted, pulling up a different display. "Look at these scans from 3 weeks ago versus today. Your damaged conduits aren't just being supported, they're beginning to regenerate. Slowly, yes, but the human's biological pattern is teaching your cells a different way to heal. More primitive, perhaps, but effective." Sarah felt Zatar's shock through their bond. "I'm healing?" "Both of you are changing," Dr. Yithian confirmed. "Sarah, your nervous system is developing new structures. In time, you may be able to manipulate energy fields independently. And Zatar, your body is learning human-style regeneration. It's unprecedented." They left the lab in a daze. Word of their test results spread quickly through the station, and suddenly everyone wanted to study them, to understand how a human and a Zelathi had achieved something biology said was impossible. But the attention came with challenges. Not everyone was pleased by their bond. Some Zelathi traditionalists saw it as an abomination, a contamination of their pure energy manipulation abilities. Some humans worried that Sarah was losing her humanity, becoming something other. The worst confrontation came in the station's central plaza. Sarah and Zatar were practicing their combined constructs, drawing a small crowd of amazed onlookers when a group of Zelathi elders arrived. The lead elder, his 6 arms perfect and glowing with controlled power, looked at Zatar with undisguised disgust. "You bring shame to our people," he said, his musical voice harsh. "Bad enough that you flaunt your deformity, but now you corrupt our sacred gift with alien contamination." Sarah stepped forward, but Zatar's tendril on her arm stopped her. "Elder Zuoral?" Zatar said, voice steady. "I respect your position, but I do not accept your judgment. My bond with Sarah has given me back abilities I thought lost forever." "Parlor tricks," Zural sneered. "Mockeries of true Zelathi artistry. You create abominations, not art." He raised 4 of his arms, and Sarah tensed as she recognized the gesture. He was about to create a construct, likely something to demonstrate the superiority of pure Zalathi energy work. But Zetar moved first. With Sarah's hand in its tendril, they reached out together, their merged energy flowing like water. What formed in the air between them and Zural wasn't a weapon or a shield. It was a sculpture of pure light, a human hand and a Zalathi tendril intertwined, rendered in sweeping curves of blue and gold that seemed to dance. The crowd gasped. Even Zural's perfect control wavered for a moment. The sculpture was beautiful in a way that transcended species aesthetics. It spoke of connection, of finding strength in difference, of two becoming one while remaining themselves. "You call this contamination," Zetar said quietly. "I call it evolution. I call it hope. For cycles, I believed my worth ended with my injury. Sarah showed me I was wrong. Our bond doesn't diminish either of us. It makes us both more than we were alone." Sarah squeezed Zetar's tendril, pride and love flowing through their connection. Her partner had come so far from the being who sat alone at the bonding ceremony. Zural stared at the sculpture, which continued to rotate slowly, casting prismatic shadows. Other Zalathi in the crowd were creating images with their personal devices, preserving the moment. Sarah heard whispers of revolutionary technique and new school of art. Without another word, Zural turned and left, his followers trailing behind. But one young Zalathi lingered, approaching hesitantly. I was injured in a transport accident last cycle," she said, showing arms that trembled with energy fluctuations. "The healers say I'll never create properly again. But seeing you, could you teach me? Could a human—" "There's another bonding ceremony in 6 months," Sarah said gently. "And I know several humans who would be interested in meeting you. Not out of pity, but because we've learned something important. Diversity isn't weakness. It's the source of the greatest strength." The young Zalathi's eyes brightened and she hurried away, hope in every movement. That night, in their quarters, Sarah and Zetar sat together watching the stars through their viewport. Their combined construct practice had exhausted them both, but it was a good exhaustion, like after a satisfying workout. "The elders will cause trouble," Zetar said eventually. "Let them try," Sarah replied. "We've got science on our side now. Dr. Yethian is already publishing papers. Other species are starting to look at cross-species bonding differently. We started something, Zetar." "You started something," Zetar corrected. "I just sat there feeling sorry for myself." Sarah turned to face her partner directly. Through their bond, she pushed all the warmth and affection she felt. "We started something. Together. That's how it works now, remember? Your victories are mine and mine are yours." Zetar's damaged arms, which had been completely gray and lifeless 3 weeks ago, showed the faintest trace of blue glow at the tips. The healing was slow, but it was real. "I want to try something," Zetar said suddenly. "Will you trust me?" "Always." Zetar moved closer, extending all 6 arms, even the damaged ones. "I want to show you something, a Zalathi memory technique, but it requires full trust, full openness." Sarah didn't hesitate. She placed her hands on Zetar's primary tendrils and opened their bond completely, dropping every mental barrier she had. The world exploded into sensation. Suddenly, she wasn't just Sarah. She was Sarah and Zetar, seeing through multifaceted eyes, feeling through 6 arms, experiencing memory not as images, but as living reality. She experienced the accident that had damaged Zetar, a reactor explosion on a research vessel, felt the agony of energy conduits burning out, the despair of watching others recoil from the damaged form. Years of loneliness, of being seen as lesser, broken, pitiable. But she also felt the moment in the bonding hall when a strange human had approached without fear. The shock of connection, The dawning realization that this alien species, this Sarah Chen, saw not disability, but possibility. When the memory sharing ended, both of them were crying, Sarah with tears, Zatar with a harmonic resonance that served the same purpose. "Thank you," Sarah whispered. "For what?" "For trusting me with all of it, the good and the bad." Zatar's functional arms wrapped around her in an embrace that had become familiar and essential. "Thank you for seeing me as whole when I couldn't see it myself." They stayed that way for a long time, human and Zalathi, two minds and increasingly two bodies becoming something new, something unprecedented. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, more tests, more skeptics, more barriers to break. But tonight, they were simply themselves, no longer broken, no longer alone, but together in a bond that defied every rule biology thought it knew. And in that defiance, they were teaching the galaxy a new truth. That connection transcends form, that love transcends species, and that sometimes the greatest strength comes from embracing what others call weakness. The stars continued their eternal dance outside their window, but inside, two beings who should never have been compatible continued to prove that impossible was just another word for not yet tried. 1 year. It had been 1 year since Sarah Chen had walked across a crowded hall to take the hand of a disabled Zalathi, and the galaxy would never be the same. Sarah stood before the Galactic Alliance Council, Zatar beside her in a mobility device that now seemed more like a throne than a medical necessity. The great chamber was packed with representatives from every known sentient species, all here to witness what the media had dubbed the testimony that could change everything. "Honored counselors," Sarah began, her voice steady despite the magnitude of the moment. "1 year ago, I participated in a bonding ceremony that everyone said would fail. I bonded with Zatar, a Zalathi whose injuries made them an outcast among their own people. Today, we stand before you not to ask for acceptance, but to show you the future." She nodded to Zatar, and together they began their demonstration. It started simply, a small orb of light forming between them, shifting through colors no single species could produce alone. But then it grew, expanded, became something more. The construct that filled the council chamber was unlike anything the assembled beings had ever seen. It wasn't just light and energy. It was emotion given form, memory made tangible. Those watching could feel the joy of first connection, the struggle of learning to work together, the triumph of overcoming impossibility. But more than that, the construct showed data, real hard scientific evidence collected over months of study. Neural pathways merging and strengthening, damaged tissue regenerating in ways that defied conventional medicine. Two distinct biological systems learning to function as one while maintaining their individual integrity. When the display faded, the chamber was silent. Then, Council Prime Aetheri, ancient and wise, leaned forward. Her crystalline form caught the light as she spoke. "Explain to us, in simple terms, what we just witnessed," Zatar answered, its voice clear and strong through the translator. "We are proof that the boundaries between species are not walls, but bridges waiting to be built. Our bond has not only restored abilities I had lost, but has created capabilities neither of us possessed alone." "And the medical implications?" Counselor Vrex asked, his reptilian features betraying intense interest. Dr. Yethian, who had been invited as an expert witness, stood excitedly. "Revolutionary! The human-Zalathi bond has shown us that interspecies biological integration can repair damage thought permanent. We've already seen successful bondings between humans and 3 other species with previously irreversible injuries. The healing potential is staggering." "But at what cost?" interrupted Counselor Maytalk, representing the purist faction. "These beings are no longer truly human or truly Zalathi. They've become hybrids, contaminated." Evolved, Sarah cut in firmly. We've evolved, and we're not the only ones. She gestured to the gallery, where dozens of interspecies bonded pairs sat watching. A human bonded with a partially paralyzed Kendry, now able to walk again. A deaf Corvidi whose human partner had helped them develop new ways to perceive sound, each pair a testament to the power of connection over convention. You say contamination? Sarah continued. We say adaptation. You see loss of purity. We see gain of possibility. The greatest strength of life has always been its ability to change, to grow, to become more than what it was. The social implications concern us, Council Prime Aetheri said. Traditional bonding practices have maintained cultural integrity for millennia. With respect, Council Prime, Zetar interjected, those same traditions left me to live a life of isolation. How many others have been condemned to loneliness because they didn't meet standards of physical perfection? How much potential has been wasted because we feared difference? The council murmured among themselves. Then Councillor Vrex asked the questions Sarah had been expecting. What do you propose? Sarah and Zetar exchanged a look, feeling each other's determination through their bond. We propose the Integration Initiative, Sarah said, activating a holographic display. A program to facilitate and study interspecies bonding specifically for beings with disabilities or injuries. Not to replace traditional bonding, but to expand it, to give hope to those who have none. The display showed projected outcomes, medical breakthroughs from studying successful integrations, diplomatic benefits from deeper interspecies connections, cultural evolution from the mixing of perspectives. This is too radical, Councillor Maytalk objected. The risks were the same risks taken when the first species joined the Alliance, Zetar countered. When the first translators were developed, when the first joint colonies were established, every great leap forward requires courage. And humans, Sarah added with a smile. We're really good at leaping without looking, but we're also good at catching those who fall. It's what we do. The debate continued for hours. Traditional voices argued for caution, for maintaining the old ways. Progressive voices pushed for change, citing the evidence Sarah and Zetar had presented. Back and forth it went, the future of the galaxy hanging in the balance. Finally, Council Prime Aetheri called for silence. We will vote. All in favor of establishing the Integration Initiative as a trial program? One by one, manipulators, tentacles, energy fields, and various appendages rose in affirmation. Sarah held her breath, Zetar's tendril tight in her hand. Motion passes, Aetheri announced. The Integration Initiative will begin with limited scope, expanding based on results. Sarah Chen and Zetar, you will serve as the program's first ambassadors. The chamber erupted in a mixture of celebration and protest. But Sarah barely heard it. She was too busy feeling the joy radiating from Zetar, seeing the tears in the eyes of disabled beings in the gallery who finally had hope. 6 months later, the Integration Center on Station Prime was bustling with activity. Sarah walked through the halls, no longer needing to hold Zetar's tendril constantly. Their bond had stabilized to the point where they could function separately while maintaining their connection. More incredibly, Zetar's damaged arms were no longer gray and lifeless. They glowed with a soft light, weak compared to the original strength, but functional. The hybrid healing process was slow but undeniable. Ambassador Chen, a young human called out, jogging to catch up. I'm supposed to meet with a Threnody who lost their telepathic abilities in an accident. Any advice? Sarah smiled. Don't be afraid of the pain. The connection is worth it. And remember, you're not there to fix them. You're there to become something new together. The young man nodded and hurried off. Sarah continued to the center's main training hall, where Zetar was working with a group of bonded pairs, teaching them combined energy manipulation. The variety was staggering. Humans bonded with crystalline beings, creating living art. corvidi paired with aquatic species, developing new forms of communication, each pair unique, each breaking supposed biological laws. "Sarah!" Zetar's voice was bright with excitement. "Come see what Mexra and John have achieved." Sarah approached the pair, a human and a being that looked like living shadow. Together, they were creating constructs that existed partially in normal space and partially in dimensions Sarah couldn't quite perceive. "That's impossible," she said, then laughed. "I should stop saying that word." "Humans," Zetar said fondly. "Teaching the galaxy that impossible just means challenge accepted." Later, they stood on the observation deck, looking out at the stars. Ships from across the galaxy docked at the station, bringing more candidates for the program. What had started with one impulsive decision had become a movement. "Any regrets?" Zetar asked. Sarah considered. Her body had changed in ways that sometimes startled her. She could perceive energy fields now, could create simple constructs without Zetar's help. Some humans whispered that she was no longer one of them. But then she felt the warmth of her bond, the presence of the being who had become as essential to her as breathing. She thought of all the lives they'd changed, all the connections they'd made possible. "Never," she said firmly. "Not for a moment." "The purists still protest," Zetar noted, "both human and Zalathi. They say we're destroying the purity of our species." "Let them," Sarah shrugged. "While they're busy protesting, we'll be busy evolving. That's what life does. It adapts, it changes, it finds new ways to thrive. We're not destroying anything. We're building something new." A chime sounded, indicating another ship's arrival. Through the transparent aluminum, they could see the vessel's markings. It was from Earth, carrying the largest group of human volunteers yet. "Your people are particularly eager to join the program," Zetar observed. "Because we've been the underdogs," Sarah explained. "The newcomers to the galactic scene. Everyone else has had millennia to establish their place. But this levels the playing field. It shows that our greatest strength isn't our technology or our resilience. It's our ability to connect, to empathize, to stand with those who stand alone. To step forward without a moment's doubt," Zetar added softly, remembering. They watched as the new arrivals disembarked, eyes wide with wonder and possibility. Among them, Sarah spotted a woman in a wheelchair, a man with prosthetic limbs, others with less visible disabilities but the same hope in their faces. "They've come to find their partners," Zetar said. "They've come to find themselves," Sarah corrected. "The partnership just helps them get there." A young Zalathi approached them hesitantly. Sarah recognized her, the one who had asked about teaching after the confrontation with the elders. She now wore the insignia of a successful bonding, her human partner close beside her. "Ambassadors," she said formally, then broke into a smile. "I wanted to thank you, both of you. You gave me hope when I had none. You showed me that strength comes in many forms." "You found your own strength," Zetar replied. "We just reminded you it was there." As the pair walked away, Sarah felt a deep satisfaction. This was what it was all about. Not the scientific breakthroughs, though those were important. Not the political implications, though those mattered. It was about individuals finding connection, finding hope, finding themselves in the reflection of another's acceptance. "The next bonding ceremony is tomorrow," Zetar said. "The first one officially sponsored by the Integration Initiative. They say over 1,000 beings have registered, half of them with some form of disability or injury. And the other half? Beings who've learned that perfection is overrated. That difference is not something to be feared, but celebrated." Sarah grinned. "Looks like we really did start something." "No," Zetar corrected, pulling Sarah close with all 6 arms, even the ones that had once hung lifeless, now able to embrace. "We started everything." Above them, the stars continued their eternal dance, but now they seemed less distant, less cold. Each point of light represented a world, a species, a billion potential connections waiting to be made. The future stretched before them, bright with possibility. There would be challenges, certainly. Not everyone would accept the changes. Some bonds would fail. Some would fear the transformation that came with true integration. But as Sarah stood there, feeling the steady pulse of her bond with Zatar, watching new arrivals take their first steps toward impossible connections, she knew the truth. Humanity's greatest gift to the galaxy wasn't their technology or their adaptability. It was their ability to see beauty in the broken, strength in the struggling, and potential in the imperfect. It was their willingness to step forward without a moment's doubt and say, "Yes, I choose you, not despite your differences, but because of them." The galaxy had learned something from humanity, and humanity had learned something from the galaxy. Together, they were becoming something greater than the sum of their parts. And in a quiet corner of a space station, where a year ago a disabled alien had sat alone and ignored, now stood a thriving center of hope and transformation. All because one human had looked past the surface and seen a soul worth knowing. The revolution had begun not with weapons or politics, but with a simple gesture of acceptance. A hand extended in friendship, a bond that refused to break, and the galaxy would never be the same again.